So there's our cover shot. And you're gonna meet some of these plants, and that river Kelly saw from the plane over the air. And so we just want to thank you all very much for coming out tonight. And you all know this is Kelly Chadwick, I think, and I'm Beth Judy. And so this was our trip. We were in Argentine, Patagonia, and we were there at the end of not last year, but the year before. And we were there for 17 days, and we went to both northern and southern Patagonia. And we're going to give you more detail about where we went in a second. And we're going to show you lots of pictures, and we're going to try not to talk too much.
We are, the photos will show the scientific names of the plants, we'll show family, genus, and species. We'll use few common names because we only heard them in Spanish. There's just a few listed. Most of our pictures of plants will show a close-up of the photo of the plant. It'll show a close-up of the plant and then a habitat shot, so you can see where the plant was growing. Oh, and to remember we're in the southern hemisphere, so we're south of the equator. So the south sides were the cool sides, north sides were the hot, sunny sides. That's why we've got that. Okay.
And by the way, that's the Argentine flag, which you see flying very stiffly there in the wind. And it really is windy in Patagonia. So we traveled with the North American Rock Garden Society, NARGS, that's who put this trip on. And this was our group. And they encouraged the study, cultivation, and preservation of saxatile plants, a word that I didn't know until now. But those are rock-loving plants that grow well among rocks. And you'll see there's some very rocky places where we were. And a lot of these people were rock gardeners, and they were very thrilled to be there. And it was international. There were 2 Brits, 2 Canadians, and then the rest were Americans. And so this shows where we went. Patagonia, you see, overlaps both Chile and Argentina. Most of it's in Argentina. And first we were in the north. We started out in San Carlos de Bariloche, just mostly people call it Bariloche. And we just did a very small little tour, although Kelly reminded me it was about 200 miles to the north and then over and back. But it's a very small part of Patagonia, but we saw such variety and so many amazing plants. Then we got on a plane and flew almost down to the tip of South America to a little town called El Calafate, which is named after a plant. And we just went between 2 towns there. We were down there for 5 of our days and in the north for 12. And we just wanted to give you a few facts about Patagonia. And, you know, we were there in the spring, even though it was our winter. It's very sparsely populated. You will see often our tour bus was the only vehicle in a vast landscape. There's the elevation range, 0 to 13,300. And what we learned basically that was very special was that when we would tell Argentines in other parts of the country that we were going to Patagonia, they'd say, oh, and they'd get sort of a mystical look on their face. And so Patagonia really means a lot to Argentines and probably Chileans too. It's a special place to them. I think it's kind of an equivalent of the American West to Americans, a pristine place, a place that's still wild. And so we learned that. And this is Lake Nahuel Huapo. And for example, we met a tour guide in Buenos Aires named Nahuel, and his parents had named him after this lake, even though they lived in the city of Buenos Aires. And then we wanted to just introduce our guides. The older woman is Marcela Ferreira, and she's one of the foremost botanists of Argentina. She specializes in alpine plants, really, and she wrote these 2 books. And then the younger woman is Anna, and she is a naturalist and a teacher, really knew her plants as well. And the way that Marcela divided up her books, we're going to divide our talk up tonight. We're going to talk about alpine plants first, and then steppe plants.
And we also have the books right up here if you want to look at them with another map of Argentina. in Patagonia. So for alpine, or pertaining to Patagonia, it's a lot like Montana. It's harsh, windy, cold, and the plants have adapted that way also. We're going to see lots of mats and cushions as we go through this. And we are going to, well, anyway, you're just going to be seeing a lot of plants, not too much talking, which is great. And oh, this is
just habitat that we wanted to show you.
and it's also you can see the town of Bariloche down in the foreground. So we'd gone up a ski lift, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and this was our first alpine outing here. And so this is the shamrock family. Then there were a lot in this country, in Patagonia. And the milkweed family.
Did that have milky sap?
I didn't break it off, but I bet it did. I am assuming it would. And so this is what we saw a lot of. These are the form of mini violets in Patagonia. And they're called roselet, or they grow in a rosette form. And what do I say? Many are succulent, adapted to that harsh climate. Their distribution for all of that genus is from Ecuador, from the equator in Ecuador south to central and southern Patagonia in Argentina and Chile. They grow in loose volcanic soils, typically. There's 100 species along the Andes from Peru to Argentina and Chile. In Patagonia, there's 27 species with new ones being discovered still. Here's another. Oh, and they're also called Andinium violets. That is a common name. This is a variety of the one before. We saw a lot of this genus throughout. These were really neat. These are in the buttercup family. So you can see them in bud and then flowering. And they have, you'll see here, like a broccoli-like leaf. You know, the flowers were about this size and they were, yeah.
So we hiked up to this lake and the next batch of pictures is going to be from around here.
So these are a lot of plants were new to us, the genuses. And this time though, asters and valerians are what we can find around here, but different. The Nasavias, there's all kinds of forms of those in Patagonia. Another violet.
So these on the north slopes.
You know,
Doesn't matter.
it didn't seem to matter. They were in hot cooking sun. Yeah.
So this is another place that we went and found plants. There is a volcano. See the smoke is slightly different from the clouds around it at the base there, and that's the town of Caviaque. And the lake is, by the way, that volcano did erupt kind of recently. I think it was 2016, and we heard stories about that from people who had gone through that. That lake is very acid because of the volcano. And we're going to show you a picture later of where these acid waters flow to. So the next group of plants that we'll show you is from around here, and notice the evacuation route sign.
This plant we saw a lot of. It was growing in alpine and steppe, and it wasn't specific, but it was a great plant. So this was by the volcano. And this is the plant that will hybridize. You're gonna see what comes from it in a minute. So they had a lot of these columnar type violets, which were really neat. So the cross with this and the prior one and this, and then there were many variations in the cross.
So now we are down in southern Patagonia. We're still going to be talking about alpine plants. But this is right near those mountains are right on the border with Chile. And that tallest one is called Mount Fitzroy. And like here, there is a movement to change names like Mount Fitzroy after some European or American or somebody to more native or original names.
And this was on our way up toward the base of Mount Fitzroy. And these were plants we saw. We didn't see a lot on this trip here, but buttercup family and shamrock family. We're probably 2/3 up here, I think. And then that was our destination. We were not climbing the mountains. But you can see the glaciers coming down, and this was an oddball plant. Beth found it. We're going to talk about the Patagonia steppe in relationship to Patagonia. Again, it's a lot like Montana. There's less precipitation. It's much drier and it's warmer there than it is in Montana. But it's harsh, windy, and lots of grasses and shrubs you could see there. And this is another Nasavia I was talking about. We saw those, but this one's a cactus looking one. But the flowers are more like yarrow when it blooms. We didn't see it blooming. Another in the steppe, we saw that Oreophilus prior. And then another shamrock. So these were growing, and you can see that coarse sandy soil, and they were just these brilliant pink, and the leaves are detailed. But yeah, it just went for a long ways anyway. You'd see the pink dots. This is related to our blue-eyed grass.
I think the common name is yellow-eyed grass.
Yellow-eyed, I think that in Spanish, oro something grass, yeah.
Keep around for the flowers.
They were larger. They looked more iris-like, smaller than iris, much larger than our blue-eyed grass. And this is another broccoli-like plant, but it's not the same genus. And these were, that tall. And a buttercup, and it was probably the size of a quarter. Buttercup family. Am I going too fast, too slow? And that's hard to see, not a great photo, but it's almost black. It was just an interesting plant.
This is where our next batch of pictures comes from, and that's an old volcanic cone or something. Steppe.
And this was a neat plant, and it's related to, our bitterroot. Oh, I'm forgetting bitterroot, Montia,
Spring beauties,
and
miner's lettuce.
Thank you. I can't read this thing, so. And this is, related to that grocery store cut flower that you can go find. There were a lot in this genus. And this, we were noticing similarity of the plant and the person. And we named Anna. Do you like that? Wait, I haven't sent her this picture yet. Peter, could you key her out? Okay. Oh, and so there were lots of mats and mounds in this area, and they press, mounds and mats press their bodies, their plant bodies to the ground, right? And that helps them hold in humidity and heat and to grab organic material. The leaves are often adapted and are smaller to this they're smaller in this harsh climate. They have waxes, resins, hairs, and some of them have become spines, the leaves themselves, just to deal with the harsh climate. And we're going to see a series of mounds and mats right now. And these were big. So we were looking at small things before. These are really large.
Carrot family.
Yeah. Another species, but you can see how large they are as they scatter across the landscape. There were not a lot of critters. We were there early, so we only saw some insects, not a lot. Animals were the guanaco. What else did we see?
They have many fewer mammals than we do, and birds too, I think. I mean, we saw rheas, which are large
Yeah.
birds, not as large as ostriches, I think, but big bodies like that.
But yeah, we didn't see a lot, and there are rare animals down there when you look, but they don't seem to have what we have in diversity.
Were there many bees in there?
There were not. I mean, I think it was because it was early in the season. It was still cool. But there was one plant, that yellow lily that was in the sand we saw. When I was at one plant and I could hear this clicking, like a beetle was clicking, and it was a bee in a plant that was clicking. But no, I think it was just the time of year. It was early. No, it's not too warm. I mean, there was snow where we were. I mean, it gets cold. It just doesn't get the sub-zero. It's not, I forgot what that average was. Maybe high 20s, low 30s might be their cold, but it freezes. And then there's plenty of snow. We were in the Andes, so we were higher elevation and there was plenty of snow there. Steppe, not so much. And these were, this is again in the tomato family. They called it wild petunia. It's not a petunia.
They said it was like the progenitor of petunias,
But it's not.
but we didn't put that on the slide because we couldn't
it's
believe
not.
it.
Yeah, I looked it up. It's not. It's a Mexican one, I think. And more mounds, aster and pea family. And this is the catalpa family, right? Yeah, same family as the catalpa tree. This was one of my favorites. And the botanists were saying it's unusual because they call it upside down flower because the banner is underneath and the keel is on top. But these were, well, you can see how large they were. And just again scattered through the landscape. So yeah, nasturtium family. And those were really large, 6 to 10 feet across. Lots of things in the verbena family, and many genelias. That was a common plant in Patagonia. And some of these are fragrant, the genelias. Couldn't choose which was best. I had to show both of those. Such a neat plant. And a lot of their plants, I don't know why, they flower around the edge. I mean, many different species do. I don't know what kind of caterpillar, but I think it could hurt you. I've heard of people getting stung down there with by caterpillars.
We were actually trying to be the plant. That's why we look a little odd. I think because we had on those colors.
Yeah. So here it's still mounding. They were mounding cactus and everything, not everything, most plants were really thorny down there. And there were, I had others that were like 6 feet long like that and spreading and mounding. This was one of our early cactus we saw, which was really impressive. The foliage doesn't really look cactus-like, but there are thorns you can see.
Don't they just sort of glow?
And the hard part, we were usually out at noon, which works for me, but it was, we were shooting in really hot sun where you couldn't really see what you're aiming at. So this plant, the Cassiolarias, were common down there. They call it pocketbook plant or poor man's orchid. And they grew in a variety of habitats. You can see this, gardeners, you can grow that outside as an annual, or people grow them indoors too, but they're an interesting plant. You'll see a series. This was kind of a moist, seepy cliff.
And how big were those pockets? They look really big.
They are. So, some of the plants were this tall, some are this tall. The pockets, they are a fair sized pocket. And I was going to say on the north side, but this was a south side. This was a shady area. This was growing in where others are growing in the sun, full sun. Like this was in the steppe in full sun. And they were about 6 inches tall at the most. And this is a habitat for the next plant you're going to see, which was a really interesting plant. I got sick that day. I didn't get to see it. So I've got Beth shots and internet shots here. But
And that's the town of Calafate down there along the lake.
so here.
Wow.
So Calceolaria uniflora, and one of the really neat things, other than its look, is that this is a bird pollinated plant. I guess that's what ornithophilic. And the bird that pollinates it is called the least seed snipe. And we did see them flying around up there. And what they do is they come in and they eat that white bar there that you see, and because it's sugary. And then their head and their back gets covered with pollen, and then they go to the next one. And what a cool plant.
Did you taste anything?
Did I taste any of them? No. I guess we'll have to go back down.
We'll have to.
Yeah, and you can come too. Everyone can go.
It's a great country. It was just beautiful.
So yeah, this is more country where we saw a lot of violets.
And so I grouped these together. There's going to be, I think, 3 or 4 kind of brownish, this color tone violets, but they're all different species. So just look at them. So ants, it's one of the few places I saw insects, right? There's ants on these. And I don't know why I didn't see aphids. I don't know what was attracting them. But you can see this one is smooth and hairy on the leaves. And this is similar but different. And these are small still. We're looking at, they're hard to see. They're in brown sand. They're difficult to find. And these were tinier. And a part of these, some of these we were finding on the side of the road, just in the kind of the sand on the side of the road.
And you'd walk up and you'd think there weren't any, and then your eye would learn to find them.
And these were really showy. You can see again how tiny. And it has a lot of color forms to it. And again, you've got those rings around the flowers. And this landscape was just dotted with the shamrock and the violet. And you can see how tiny those violets were, but it was just this purple yellow display, which was beautiful. This is one of Beth's favorites. They are such like little creatures. They could be walking across the sand.
And I often had the feeling, looking at these violets, that they were a mixture of reptile and plant.
But you know, the one thing, it's a violet flower, right? It's pretty obvious if you look at the flower and not the plant, what it is.
So here's more step, and this is, around here is where we saw the next batch.
Another oxalis, again, just, you know, covering the landscape. And the same oxalis is in the background, you can see. So that's ephedra. We'd call it Mormon tea, right? Same family, so big shrubs, ephedra. I think senna's in front and oxalis is in back. And this in the hollyhock family. It was really windy this day. It was hard to shoot anything because it was almost windy every day we were out. But the flowers were fair-sized and really detailed. Okay, so the tomato family again. So we're going through a little group of shrubs here. And just kind of pretty. So, let me see here. So this waterfall, is from that acid lake Beth talked about earlier. Kapahue?
Caveat.
Yes, that's why we're not saying these names. And the waters, these acid waters were studied by Dr. Christopher Gammons and from Tech and Butte right now. And he has a family member in the audience.
And she's got a knowing smile on her face.
Yeah. So, but he was lucky enough to study down here, which was beautiful. This is after the river, after the falls, and you can see still how high the pH, how low the pH is.
And doesn't it bond with iron or something?
I was going to explain it, but I really couldn't. But it's a leaching thing, and yes, it has to do with pulling the minerals out.
So this slide and the next two are from moisture sites.
So the mimulus, it's related to our monkey flower, right? And it looks really very close to the same plant. Oh, this is this plant has an ancient family, and it went back 85 million years in fossil records. It has colonies of nitrogen fixing blue-green algae called Gnostic in the stems and in the roots. And it's also a plant that's become a weed. It has been cultivated throughout the world, and it's usually a weed wherever it's planted. But it's a neat plant.
And it's big.
It's really big, yeah. And this, the foreground, you can see our, in the yellow, our orchids. And so that's one habitat this species is growing in. And here is the orchid we found in that area. And so we'll see a few orchids here. This was my favorite. I couldn't get a good shot, but it looks like looks like it has teeth. This is a little moisture site where these are growing. This was in a shady forest. And I didn't credit Rick. I didn't want to ruin the picture. So that top photo is his. So we're going to talk about trees and a common tree were the Nothophagus. And there were 6 species in Patagonia. We saw all species. They grow in different habitats, but Nothophagus was once classified as Fagus. They were considered beech, but now it's Nothophagus. And this is a tree you could also see in New Zealand and Australia. And because of the continents were once together, right, before they split off. And so there's similar species in those countries.
So we wanted to show you the leaves and the bark of the different Nothofagus species. But the 2 most common are the Nothofagus pumila, which people there call lenga. That's the common name. It's a higher elevation tree. We saw it in we saw Dombey in the previous slide. But this one is higher elevation. We saw it near glaciers. And a lot of Patagonians and Argentines love these trees. One reason they love the pumila is for its wood, the lenga. And then the other beloved and common species is Dombey, which they call coihue. And it likes water more. And it's a very graceful, taller tree.
We spent time trying to figure these trees out. This is what we have these pictures, the differences and how to recognize them.
Yeah. There's the lenga. I think that was on the way up to Mount Fitzroy.
It was, yeah.
Is that like a burrow?
It is, yeah. And it's got that, you can see the fungus on the burl.
We're about to look at that.
And these are edible. We tried them. I don't remember what they tasted like.
They just tasted kind of neutral, but better than puffball. So this is luma, they call it luma, and it's reddish bark, and it has a funny reputation for being cold to the touch. And it really does feel cold, but we learned that that's really sort of an illusion because it's a very thin-skinned tree. So it's some kind of interaction with the warmth of your hand makes it feel cold. It's not really a cold tree.
And monkey puzzle tree. This is what I really wanted to see. And it was well worth it. These are only native to Western Argentina and central and southern Chile. Whoops.
And we wanted to show you its bark. And then you can see how very giant they are from the one that's lying down there with a equally giant Kelly on it for scale.
And they're dioecious, meaning they have separate female and male parts on separate individual plants. And so the female cones, I've marked that so you can see that. But they're thorny. You can see they're stickery to touch, and but they have this really nice symmetric form to the leaves. And the forest, so there's snow on the ground there, you can see. But being in the forest was magical. It was just an amazing feeling to be there. Yeah, it was a great spot.
And, this is a pretty picture and a pretty waterfall, but we also just wanted to point out how kind of surreal and Dr. Seussy the skyline is when there's monkey puzzle trees. And they look kind of old and primitive.
And here you can see the fractures on the right, the basalt columns. But then on top, those are really the top of the fractures of the basalt that you're seeing here. And I took that photo because it echoed the bark, the pattern of the bark and the rocks. It was just a beautiful place. I took this for Giovanna if she was here, but she's not, because this was a endemic lichen, and it was easier to identify because of the fruiting body. And it is on the monkey puzzle tree is on the red list. It's at risk. And one of the problems, there's many, but one of the problems are introduced species. And so we saw lots of lodgepole, Douglas fir, ponderosa pine, white pine, and you can see how they crowd that area and it creates a more hot and destructive fire.
And they were introduced by European settlers. There were so many European settlers in Argentina, and they wanted trees like that because they grew fast and they could use them for lumber. So we're getting towards the end of our talk, just to let you know.
And so we did go to this glacier, which was beautiful. We saw it calving. This was one that they've claimed that hasn't really progressed or receded. It's held its ground during climate change. A few people are saying they're beginning to maybe see this recede. So it's one that's done much better, but it's also the habitat for that firebush. You know, we just showed you.
And this shrub is related to our Oregon grape. It's a berberis. And calafate, it's the plant that town is named after. And there is a legend that says that people who eat a berry will return to Patagonia, and we both did eat calafate fruit. We ate the berries and we ate some jam.
Do you have tea?
I don't
No.
think we did.
We had the tea, calafate tea. No, what were we drinking? Mate.
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 Yeah. Yeah, everybody there drinks mate. So this is just proof about how windy it is.
It was like that almost every day, except for a few places.
I actually had to go to the hospital in Calafate because I got grit in my eye because of the wind.
And that's it.